There is a kind of tiredness that sleep cannot touch. It settles quietly beneath the surface of ordinary days, hidden behind busy schedules, polite smiles, and the belief that tomorrow will finally feel different. You wake with another goal in mind, move from one task to the next, and tell yourself that peace is waiting just beyond the next achievement. If only one more promotion arrives, one more relationship works out, one more dream comes true, then the restless feeling inside will finally disappear. For a brief moment, it often seems true. A long-awaited success arrives, and the mind grows quiet. The future you imagined appears within reach. Yet almost before that feeling has settled, something shifts. Satisfaction begins to fade, replaced by another desire, another comparison, another destination that suddenly feels necessary. Without realizing it, you step back onto the same road, convinced that this time it will lead somewhere different. Most people never question the road itself. They question their effort. They work harder, think faster, push longer. When life refuses to deliver the peace they expected, they assume they simply have not earned it yet. The answer, they believe, must be more discipline, more ambition, more determination. Yet there comes a moment when even determination begins to feel heavy, and the heart grows weary without knowing why. Perhaps the deepest exhaustion is not created by carrying too much. Perhaps it comes from carrying what was never yours to begin with. This possibility is difficult to accept because it asks something unexpected. It asks you to look beyond your goals and examine the force that drives them. Not every desire is born from your own nature. Some are planted quietly by comparison. Others grow from fear, from the need to prove your worth, or from the silent hope that becoming someone else will finally make you feel complete. The chase continues, not because the destination keeps moving, but because the one who is chasing has never stopped to ask where the path truly leads. Centuries ago, Lao Tzu observed the same pattern in human beings. He did not see people suffering because they lacked intelligence or effort. He saw them struggling against the current of their own lives. While the world admired those who forced outcomes into existence, he noticed something almost invisible. The river reached the sea without competing. The seasons changed without hurry. The trees stretched toward the light without comparing their height to the forest around them. His wisdom begins with a question that feels strangely unfamiliar in a world built on constant achievement. Not, what should I accomplish next? But something quieter and perhaps far more unsettling. What am I forcing? The answer cannot be found by looking farther ahead. It begins by looking inward, toward the invisible habits that make striving feel natural, and toward the hidden beliefs that convinced us we must chase what may never have belonged to us at all. Very few desires arrive in the human heart untouched. Long before we are old enough to choose our own direction, quiet voices begin choosing for us. They rarely sound like commands. More often they sound like love, concern, expectation, or admiration. We learn which achievements are celebrated, which dreams are respected, and which lives are considered successful. Little by little, we begin collecting ambitions the way children collect names, believing that if enough of them belong to us, then we will finally know who we are. Years pass, and those borrowed ideas become so familiar that they no longer feel borrowed. A career pursued because it impressed someone else, a lifestyle built to earn silent approval, a constant need to stay ahead, not because the heart longs to lead, but because falling behind feels unbearable. The strange part is that even after reaching these milestones, something remains unsettled. The emptiness is confusing because on paper nothing appears to be missing. This is one of the quietest illusions of modern life. We often mistake recognition for fulfillment. We assume that if enough people admire our path, then it must be the right one. Yet the soul has its own language, and it is remarkably indifferent to applause. It cannot be persuaded by titles, possessions, or comparisons. It simply waits, patiently, until we notice that we have been living according to a script we never consciously wrote. Lao Tzu observed this long before success became something displayed to strangers. He noticed that nature never struggled with the question of worth. A river never hurried because another river seemed to arrive first. It simply followed the shape of the land, and by remaining faithful to its own course, it reached the sea. There was no competition. There was only movement that belonged to its own nature. Human beings, however, possess the unusual ability to abandon their own current. We compare our pace with someone else's, measure our lives against unfamiliar standards, and begin forcing ourselves toward destinations that were meaningful only because they were admired. The more we imitate another path, the more resistance we often encounter. We call it bad luck or lack of discipline, seldom considering another possibility. Perhaps the struggle is not proof that we should push harder. Perhaps it is the quiet friction of moving against ourselves. This is why Taoist wisdom speaks so gently about effort. It does not promise that life will unfold without difficulty. Mountains still exist. Storms still arrive. But there is a profound difference between climbing a mountain that belongs to your journey and spending a lifetime trying to scale one simply because everyone else is climbing it. One kind of effort strengthens you. The other slowly empties you. Look again at the forest. No two trees reach toward the sky in exactly the same way. Some grow tall and straight. Others bend around stone, lean toward light, or spread wide instead of high. None of them apologize for their shape. None of them measure their worth against the tree beside them. Only human beings believe that uniqueness is a flaw to be corrected instead of a nature to be trusted. And once that possibility enters the mind, another question quietly appears. If so much of what we pursue was inherited from the world around us, how much of our struggle comes not from life itself, but from the endless effort of becoming someone we were never meant to be? There is a moment when every pursuit quietly reveals its true nature. It is not when things fall apart, but when they begin to feel increasingly difficult despite your greatest effort. You prepare for every possibility, think through every outcome, hold tighter to every plan, and somehow life becomes less responsive. The harder you try to control what happens next, the more distant peace seems to become. It is a strange contradiction because everything you have been taught insists that greater effort should produce greater results, yet life rarely follows the logic of force. Think of a relationship that slowly changed after one person began trying to control every conversation, every silence, every misunderstanding. What once felt natural became careful. Every word carried weight. Affection gave way to pressure. Not because love disappeared, but because freedom did. The same pattern appears in work pursued only from fear, in nights spent replaying conversations that cannot be changed, and in the endless search for certainty before taking the next step. The mind believes it is creating security, while quietly creating resistance instead. This is where one of the deepest ideas in Taoist wisdom begins to unfold. It is known as Wu Wei, often translated as effortless action. The phrase has been misunderstood for centuries because it seems to suggest doing less. It does not. Wu Wei is not laziness. It is not surrendering your responsibilities or waiting for life to solve your problems. It is learning the difference between acting with life and struggling against it. Nature offers this lesson without speaking a single word. The wind does not force the leaves to dance. The seasons never rush to become one another. Spring does not compete with autumn, and winter does not apologize for its stillness. Each arrives when its time has come, and because nothing is resisting its own nature, everything unfolds with remarkable precision. Water may be the clearest teacher of all. It never raises its voice against the rocks that stand in its path. It does not become frustrated because the mountain refuses to move. It simply continues. Sometimes it flows around the obstacle. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes, after years of quiet persistence, it reshapes the stone itself. Its strength is not found in aggression. It is found in its refusal to become something other than water. Human beings often mistake force for persistence. They appear similar from the outside, yet they arise from entirely different places within. Force grows from fear. It believes everything depends on immediate control. Persistence grows from trust. It continues moving without demanding that life obey its schedule. One tightens its grip whenever uncertainty appears. The other keeps walking even when the path disappears briefly from view. Perhaps this is why releasing control feels so frightening. If we stop forcing outcomes, we fear they will never happen. We imagine that our constant tension is what keeps life together. But there is another possibility that rarely enters the mind. Perhaps much of what feels difficult is not created by the world resisting us. Perhaps it is created by the invisible struggle within us, by the part that cannot stop insisting that life unfold according to its own design. And until that quiet struggle is seen, the heaviest burden will never be the obstacles before us. It will be the identity within us that believes it must hold everything together, even when life is asking it gently to let go. There comes a quiet moment when the struggle no longer feels like it is about reaching something ahead. It begins to feel as though something inside is afraid to be left behind. A promotion becomes more than a career. A relationship becomes more than love. Even constant busyness becomes more than work. Beneath each pursuit, another pursuit is hiding, one that is rarely spoken aloud. It is the effort to protect an image of who we believe we must be. Many lives are shaped by invisible identities. The successful person, the perfect partner, the one everyone depends on, the one who never fails. At first, these identities offer direction. They give us confidence and purpose. Yet over time, they begin asking for sacrifices that never end. Rest feels dangerous. Mistakes become personal. Change feels like loss. Without noticing, we stop living our lives and start defending an idea of ourselves. This is why ancient Taoist wisdom speaks of an empty cup. A cup already filled cannot receive fresh water, no matter how pure the stream. The same is true of the mind. When it is crowded with fixed beliefs about who we are, every new experience is forced to fit an old story. We may change jobs, cities, or relationships, yet carry the same burden everywhere because the weight was never outside us. It was carried within the identity we refuse to set down. Letting the cup empty is not forgetting who you are. It is allowing yourself to become more than yesterday's definition. That possibility often feels frightening because certainty, even when painful, can seem safer than the unknown. The familiar prison is easier to accept than an open gate, yet freedom has always required space before it could reveal itself. Nature has little interest in rigid certainty. A young tree bends beneath the wind and grows stronger because it does. Fresh grass yields beneath every passing foot, then quietly rises again with the morning light. Water never fears changing its shape. It fills every valley because it refuses to insist on one form. What appears soft is often carrying a strength that hardness can never possess. People are taught to admire firmness, yet life quietly rewards flexibility. The branch that refuses to bend is the first to break in a storm. The heart that cannot soften eventually grows exhausted from protecting itself. There is profound courage in becoming gentle enough to change. Perhaps this is the hidden reason so many pursuits never bring peace. We imagine we are chasing success, love, recognition, or certainty. But beneath every achievement waits a quieter hope. We want permission to believe that we are already enough. And no accomplishment can grant what has always belonged to us. The moment that need begins to loosen, something unexpected appears. Life no longer feels like a contest that must be won. It begins to feel like a path that has been patiently waiting for us to walk it without carrying the weight of becoming someone else. There is a quiet moment that arrives almost unnoticed. Nothing dramatic changes. The world still asks for your attention. Challenges still appear. Some doors remain closed, and some dreams continue to take their own time. Yet something within you has shifted, and because of that, everything begins to feel different. When you stop pushing against the current of your own life, decisions lose much of their confusion. Not because every choice becomes obvious, but because you no longer measure every path by how much it impresses others. A simple answer often reveals itself once the need to prove yourself grows silent. The heart, no longer crowded by endless demands, can finally hear what it has been whispering all along. Relationships also begin to breathe differently. You stop asking people to complete a story you have been trying to tell about yourself. Their approval becomes welcome but no longer essential. Their absence hurts, yet it no longer defines your worth. There is a quiet freedom in allowing others to arrive, to stay, or to leave without believing that each movement changes who you are. Something else changes as well, though it is easy to overlook. Comparison slowly loses its grip. Another person's success is no longer evidence of your failure. Another person's pace is no longer a judgment of your own. Like trees growing in the same forest, each life reaches toward the light according to its own nature. No tree rushes another, and still the forest becomes whole. This is not because the Tao removes difficulty. Storms still pass through the valley. Seasons still change without asking permission. Loss remains part of being alive. But when your life is rooted in alignment instead of pursuit, suffering no longer multiplies through resistance. You respond instead of struggle. You bend instead of break. Even uncertainty begins to feel less like an enemy and more like an unopened path. Ambition does not disappear. It becomes quieter and more honest. Instead of asking, "How much can I gather?" it begins to ask, "What is mine to cultivate?" Purpose grows from that question. It asks less for applause and more for presence. In that presence, opportunities often appear where constant searching once saw only obstacles, because the mind finally has room to recognize what force could never discover. Perhaps this has always been the hidden invitation. Perhaps life was never withholding what you longed for. Perhaps it was patiently waiting for the moment you became still enough to notice what had never left your side. Imagine a river flowing toward the sea. It never envies the mountain standing above it. It never questions whether it should become something else. By following its own nature completely, it reaches places that effort alone could never conquer. And perhaps peace begins in much the same way. Not when you finally possess everything you once chased, but when you recognize that what truly belongs to you has been quietly walking beside you all along, waiting for you to stop running long enough to see it.